Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make today perfect with one small action because the future doesn't start tomorrow. It starts now. In a small village surrounded by golden fields and slow sunsets, there lived a boy named Liam. The wind often carried the sound of laughter from children chasing kites and the rustle of leaves whispering through the orchard. But Liam wasn't part of that noise. He was quiet. Too quiet, some would say. People in the village called him lazy, though that word didn't tell the whole story. Behind his stillness lived a boy who dreamed in silence. He dreamed of becoming someone greater, someone capable, someone the world could look at with pride. But his dreams stayed locked inside his heart, waiting for a day that never seemed to come. Each morning, he told himself, "I'll start tomorrow." And every night, as he lay under the dim glow of his small lamp, he repeated the same promise. His books gathered dust, his room stayed messy, and his life felt paused, as if he were watching the days drift past from behind a window. He wasn't lazy because he didn't care. He was lazy because he cared too much. So much that the fear of failing held him still. He waited for the perfect moment, for the right spark, for something magical to push him forward. But that moment never arrived. Waiting felt safe, comfortable, like standing in warm water even when it's slowly rising. Deep down, he didn't realize that comfort was the quiet killer of dreams. Each tomorrow, he promised himself, became a thief, stealing another piece of his potential, another piece of who he could have been. Without realizing it, Liam was building his own cage out of hesitation and calling it someday. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. His grades began to fall, his teachers stopped smiling, and his confidence cracked like glass under pressure. He would sit at his desk, staring at his open notebooks, feeling the weight of time pressing against him. At night, when the world fell silent, he'd look up at the stars through his window and whisper, "Why do I feel stuck? Why can't I change?" But the stars never answered. Their light was distant, beautiful, and unreachable, just like his dreams. Every night he hoped something would shift, that a new day would suddenly bring motivation. But the mornings always arrived the same way, empty, dull, and heavy with guilt. Eventually, even his heart began to grow quiet. He could feel something fading inside him, a slow erosion of belief. Each later, he whispered, became heavier, until it felt like carrying stones in his chest. And though no one could see it, he was drowning beneath the weight of his own delay. This is where so many dreams end. Not because people fail, but because they keep waiting for the perfect day to begin. We tell ourselves we're not ready, that next week will be easier, that tomorrow will finally change. But tomorrow is an illusion, a soft trap that steals our life one peaceful day at a time. Still, somewhere deep in the quietest corner of Liam's heart, a small voice refused to die. It whispered faintly, "There must be more than this." And that whisper, as fragile as it was, would soon become the spark that would change everything. Even as days blurred into weeks, Liam's quiet struggle didn't go unnoticed. His mother, a woman whose hands were always busy with work and whose eyes carried both love and exhaustion, had watched her son drift further into silence. Every evening, she would see him sitting near the window, his face dimly lit by the orange glow of a fading sunset, his body still, his thoughts miles away. There was something haunting about that stillness, a kind of sadness that only a mother could see. She remembered the boy he used to be, the one who laughed loudly, ran barefoot through the wheat fields, and talked endlessly about building something great. But now, that boy was fading, hidden beneath the heavy fog of tomorrow. That evening, the house was unusually quiet. The ticking of the old clock echoed across the small room as Liam sat at his desk, tracing circles on the corner of an unopened notebook. His mother stood by the doorway, holding a folded cloth in her hands, watching him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, in a voice soft but steady, she spoke. A voice that carried both warmth and warning. "My son, life doesn't wait," she said. "Every day you waste is a stone you place upon your own shoulders. And one day, those stones will crush you." The words hung in the air, fragile yet sharp, like glass reflecting candlelight. Liam froze, the sound of her voice cutting through the fog of his thoughts. He turned to look at her, the gentle wrinkles on her face, the sadness in her eyes, and for a brief second, he felt something shift inside him, but it was fleeting. He smiled faintly, that same tired smile he always wore when truth hit too close. "What difference will one day make?" he whispered, almost to himself. His mother sighed, but she didn't answer. She knew the battle wasn't with her words. It was with the war inside him. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Liam looked down at his hands, feeling a strange ache in his chest. But instead of moving, he stayed still. And just like that, another evening slipped away. The stars came out again, bright and distant, and tomorrow reached out its invisible hand, taking one more piece of his future. Outside, the wind rustled through the fields, whispering softly against the window pane. It carried the faint scent of rain, a quiet reminder that change was coming, even if Liam couldn't yet see it. But for now, he sat there beneath the dim lamp, unaware that those words from his mother would soon echo in his mind, louder and louder, until they became impossible to ignore. Liam's mother's words lingered in the house like an echo that refused to fade. His father, a man of few words but heavy thoughts, watched his son with quiet worry. He had once been proud of Liam's bright mind, the way the boy used to ask endless questions about the world. But now, those questions had turned into silence. The spark was gone, replaced by a dull stare and empty promises of, "I'll start tomorrow." After weeks of watching this quiet surrender, his father decided something had to change. One early morning, while the mist still clung to the trees, he told Liam to get dressed. "We're going to see someone," he said, his voice calm but firm. They walked through winding paths that led to the far edge of the village, where time seemed to move differently, slower, wiser. There stood a small wooden house surrounded by ancient oak trees, their branches bending low as if listening. This was the home of Master Rowan, a man known across villages for helping lost souls find their way again. Some called him a teacher, others called him something more, a guide who could see what people hid even from themselves. Liam had heard stories about him as a child, but never imagined he would one day stand at his door. When Master Rowan appeared, he didn't look like the kind of man legends were built around. His robe was simple, his eyes calm, and his presence quiet but powerful, like a deep lake that never ripples. He looked at Liam for a long moment without speaking. Then, in a voice soft but steady, he said, "So, you're the boy who waits for tomorrow." The words hit Liam harder than he expected. He felt his chest tighten, as if the man had read the truth written behind his silence. Liam lowered his gaze, unable to meet Rowan's eyes. "I don't mean to," he murmured. "I just don't know where to start." The old man nodded slowly, a small, knowing smile touching his face. You don't start with the mountain, he said. You start with a single step. He then motioned for Liam to follow him inside. The room was lined with old books, faint candlelight, and a faint scent of sandalwood. In the center of the room sat a small clay pot and a basket filled with smooth, round stones. Master Rowan lifted the pot with both hands and placed it gently in front of Liam. "This," he said, "will be your teacher for the next 30 days." Liam frowned, confused. Rowan continued, "Each morning, when you complete your most important task, drop one stone into this pot. But if you skip it, if you let the days slip away, the pot will remain empty. At the end of 30 days, bring it back to me." Liam stared at the pot. It seemed too simple, almost meaningless. A small task, a small pot, a few stones. How could that change anything? But something in Rowan's tone told him this was not a game. It was a mirror, a test of will and truth. "It sounds easy," Liam said softly. Rowan smiled faintly. "That's the trap," he replied. "The easy things are the hardest to keep doing. And yet, they build everything." As Liam left that day, the weight of the clay pot felt heavier than he expected. He didn't realize then that he wasn't just carrying clay and stones. He was carrying the chance to rebuild himself, one small act at a time. The path home was long, and the pot clinked quietly with every step, a soft reminder that his real challenge had just begun. The next morning, the village was still asleep. Faint mist floated above the fields, and a pale light seeped through Liam's window. For a moment, he almost rolled over to return to sleep, that familiar whisper creeping back into his head. Just 5 more minutes. Start tomorrow. But something inside him stirred. The memory of Master Rowan's calm eyes and his mother's words echoed softly. Life doesn't wait. Slowly, painfully, he sat up. His body felt heavy, every part of him screaming for rest. Yet he pushed himself forward, opened his book, and studied for 1 quiet hour. The clock ticked softly in the background, each second marking a tiny victory against the old version of himself. When the hour was done, he reached for the small basket beside his desk and dropped the first stone into the clay pot. Clink! The sound was almost nothing, a soft tap of stone against earth. But to Liam, it was thunder. It felt powerful, like the sound of a beginning he had waited for all his life. The days that followed were not easy. Some mornings, he woke up late and stared at the empty pot, guilt pressing against his chest. On those days, the silence of the missing stone was louder than any noise. But other mornings, he fought through, reading, cleaning, finishing a task that once felt impossible. Every time he dropped a stone into the pot, it was like striking a match in the dark. The sound became his rhythm, his heartbeat, his quiet reminder that he could change. There were days he failed, yes, days when fatigue, doubt, or old habits took over. But something was different now. He no longer surrendered completely. He began again the next morning, again and again, until trying itself became a habit. And as the weeks passed, something subtle began to shift. The pot grew heavier, the stones slowly stacking up. But what grew even more was his heart. That small sound, clink, had become his proof that he was capable of more than excuses. Each stone was a declaration of war against the voice that once ruled his life, the one that whispered, "Tomorrow." Now, when that voice spoke, Liam had an answer: the sound of progress. From that day forward, Liam lived differently. The boy who once woke up to excuses now woke up to purpose. The mornings that once felt heavy and gray began to carry quiet promise. He would rise with the first light of dawn, when the world was still half asleep, and sit by his window with a notebook and a cup of tea. Before the day began, he would spend a few minutes in silence, breathing, thinking, listening. It was during these silent moments that he found something he had never known before: peace. Then he would open his books and read, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Each morning became a small ritual, a personal ceremony of rebirth. He no longer waited for motivation to find him. He created it through action. What once felt like punishment now felt like power. A year later, the village that once whispered lazy now spoke of Liam with quiet admiration. He was no longer the boy who waited for tomorrow. He had become a man who shaped today. In a small corner of his home, beside the same window where he once stared helplessly at the stars, now stood a small desk, a computer, and shelves filled with boxes. It started simple: handmade crafts that he sold online, each one a reflection of care, patience, and honesty. But as word spread, people didn't just buy his work, they bought into his story. They saw the discipline behind every piece, the consistency behind every detail. His name became known not for brilliance or luck, but for perseverance. His discipline became his identity, and that was worth more than anything else. Through his quiet transformation, Liam discovered a truth that burned brighter than any star he had once prayed to. Small habits are stronger than talent, stronger than luck, stronger than intelligence. He realized that greatness doesn't come from grand gestures. It's built quietly, one small act repeated over and over until it changes who you are. His story became a message for every dreamer who says, "I'll start tomorrow." He wanted them to know that tomorrow never arrives, that everything begins in the small choices we make today. Now, when people asked him how he changed, he would smile and say softly, "One stone at a time." And so, as the sun dipped behind the fields that evening, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold, Liam placed his old clay pot on the windowsill. Inside it lay the same 20 stones from his first 30 days, worn, faded, but sacred. They were no longer just stones. They were his story, his reminder that even the smallest action can become the foundation of a new life. He looked out at the horizon, the same one that had once made him feel small, and whispered, "Not with doubt this time, but with certainty." Don't wait for the perfect moment. Make today perfect with one small action, because the future doesn't start tomorrow. It starts now.